What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the top 5 most broken builds in part of Exile's 2 new update, The Rise of the Abyssal. So in this guide I will give you a quick overview of each setup, then I will explain what skill gems and upgrades should you focus on, then as well we'll see what is the best gear and how to get it, and then finally we will go over to the passive skill tree, the stats, skill rotations, and even what atlas passive should you use, so we would be able to get the highest damage possible and much more. And remember, if you want to check these builds, look up the best items, the skill trees and path of building, then check my links in the description. And before we continue, thanks to U4GM. They are a pro website that provides POE2 services like cheap currency, then even to trade all types of quality items and gems and much more. They have also more than 20,000 positive comments on Trustpilot, and this website is really worth a try. So make sure to use my discount code KATE for extra 6% off. This build is brand new in 0.3 update, and I promise you it's everything that you ever wanted if you've dreamed about playing a pure martial artist build. So no clunky weapon swaps, no chasing expensive uniques every 5 levels, and no stressing about the perfect 6-length staff. With this build, your fists are your weapons, and thanks to the hollow palm, those arms will hit like a truck. Now let's be upfront, the core of your gameplay revolves around the storm wave and the upfield, or insane map clearing, while Tempest Flurry and the Tempest build will shred bosses and rares with precision combo damage. One thing to note here is that the exact unarmed scaling in POE2 is still being tested, but even if the run numbers change slightly, the mechanic itself is already crazy strong. I love this build because it solves one of the biggest problems for most players, which is the gear dependency. With the hollow palm you don't need to farm a weapon or even spend much currency. The keystone scales directly off your attributes, your gem levels and your defenses. That means every upgrade you pick up will automatically feed your fists more damage. It's cheap, it's efficient and it's fast. Then second, the setup plays exactly how you want a monk to feel. You're not standing in the back just shooting arrows or waiting for the cooldowns, so you will be constantly moving. And overall, this build clears like lightning fast mapper with huge AoV from the Storm of Wave. But it also has that controlled single target rotations that you need for the big bosses. If you want speed, power and a no weapon build, then you should try this one out. So let's take a look at the skill gems, because this is where the hollow palm monk will really shine. The entire identity of this setup is built around the lightning fast unarmed attacks. That means we are blending rapid melee strikes with spell like elemental procs. Your bread and butter here is the Tempest Flurry. This is your main combo skill, the one that you will be constantly using into the enemies. To really push its damage, you will link it with the rapid attacks, lightning attunement and the elemental armament. Then second we got the Storm of Wave, which is your secondary offensive skill. It gives you a massive AoV nuke that clears screens in seconds, while also boosting your critical potential. Now we need a way to keep charges flowing and the momentum rolling, and that's where the lingering illusion comes in. Paired with the charge profusion, every time you dodge roll, you drop an illusion, and when enemies hit you, you will gain charges. More rolls mean more charges, and those charges are the engine that powers our next skill, the Charge Staff. This skill in exchange will apply shock and innervate by keeping enemies vulnerable to the lightning damage while giving you a steady stream of offensive buffs. It's a perfect loop, so dodge, drop illusions, gain charges, and fuel even more damage. Then for auras, this build takes things to the next level with the Herald of Thunder and with the Herald of Ash. The Herald of Thunder is linked with the Electrocute and the Lightning Attunement, and it basically blankets the entire map with the chain lightnings whenever you get a kill. It's the core reason of why mapping feels so smooth. On top of that, the Herald of Ash will provide hybrid scaling, so crits and overkills will trigger fire burn explosions that amplify clear and even stack on the boss damage. Together, these two heralds will create fireworks of chained explosions every time that you attack. And finally, we've got the Tempest Belt. Think of this as a flexible slot. Sometimes it's an AoV option for spreading more coverage, or sometimes it's your single target combo tool against bosses. So in short, it synergizes beautifully with our Flurry. Next up, let's move over to the passive tree, because this is where we take the hollow palm idea and crank it to the max. The general idea is simple. We are investing in dexterity and the energy shield nodes, while stacking attributes that the hollow palm converts directly into the raw offensive power, while on top of it also picking up hybrid defenses to keep us alive. Early on, you're focusing on survival and consistency, so pick up dexterity, life and evasion, so that you can push through the acts without issues. Don't worry about the crit too early, as it's a trap. You only want to start speccing into serious crit clusters like Momentum of Truth, or the hard stopping once you're at level 50 or higher, because that's the point where your base damage, attack speed and weaponless scaling will really justify the crit investment. Defensively, the tree makes you tanky in a clever way, so we're vesting into a hybrid evasion and energy shield, and Hollow Palm turns those defensive stats into offensive bonuses. Evasion translates into faster attack speed. Energy shield turns into the crit chance, so you're literally scaling your damage every time you upgrade your gear. On top of that, the life clusters are scattered along the path to keep you stable during the campaign, and masteries will help around the resistances. Offensively, we lean into the rapid unarmed attacks with devastating crits, and we can achieve this by mainly investing into dexterity nodes, because high dexterity not only feeds your accuracy and evasion, but also synergizes perfectly with the Hollow Palm scaling. Alright, now let's go over to the gear, because while the Hollow Palm does not require a weapon, you still need a strong foundation to scale. The golden rule here is simple: always cap your elemental resistances at 75%, so fire, cold and lightning all need to be maxed. That's the step 1 before you can think about anything else. Then for the main slots, you're aiming for max life, energy shield and any type of regen. The most optimized pieces that I like is for the helmet, the Vermeil circlet, then for body, the Val robe, then the belt, the Rawhide belt, then for boots, the bound boots, and for the gloves, the hunting. Then on top of it, get accessories like the topaz ring, a ruby ring and a stellar amulet. These will give you elemental resistances, life, energy shield, and most importantly, the attribute scaling. Attributes are crucial because the Hollow Palm directly converts them into damage. Ideally, you want your amulet rolled with a high life, high energy shield, and all resistances capped, and as much as flat attributes as possible. Remember, every point of dexterity and energy shield is damage. Every point of life and evasion and survivability also scales into the damage. So gearing feels extremely rewarding. You're never wasting stats on defenses, because Hollow Palm turns them into offenses too. This is what makes the build cheap and effective as a league starter. You don't need a big DPS weapon. You just need solid rares with life, resistances and attributes. And as you push into the red maps, start upgrading your defenses with a higher basis, but always prioritize attributes because they feed everything else. And now finally, let's see how to actually play this build. Honestly, this is one of the most satisfying gameplay rotations in Path of Exile 2. In the campaign, you level with a bow and a lightning rod until about level 22. It's smooth, it's fast, and it carries you through the early content without any issues. At level 23, you pick up the Hollow Palm notable and swap to the unarmed combat, and this is where the build transforms. From this point and onwards, your mapping rotation is simple but powerful. Roll into a pack, then drop the Storm Wave to wipe the screen, and weave in upfill for the extra damage spread. And let the Herald of Thunder and Herald of Ash explode everything around you. But perhaps if you need more charges, then dodge roll to drop illusions, and let the enemies fuel your charge staff. If you do this combo perfectly, then packs will just evaporate. Against bosses, the things will shift into a more precise rhythm, so you lead with the Tempest Flurry, then stacking rapid crits and shocks, then drop the Tempest Belt for a devastating combo finisher, then keep your charges flowing with illusions. Maintain Herald uptime and stack the Stormwave hits on top for massive burst windows. But perhaps if the Flurry plus the Bell combo feels uncomfortable, then you can absolutely just stick with the Stormwave as your main bossing tool until you're more comfortable. So as you can see, our rotation and the build is fun, fast and new player friendly. This setup is not just about the raw power, but about transforming the Fireball into something that feels entirely new, thanks to the infusion system and the Black Flame Covenant Keystone. The idea of turning the basic flame into a purple one that scales with both Ignite and Chaos mechanics makes this build one of the most unique spellcasters in the game. At its core, the build revolves around the Fireball, which is a skill that has existed since the very beginning of Path of Exile, but Fireball has changed dramatically in the 0.3 by becoming a spell that interacts with the new infusion mechanic. Infusions are temporarily elemental ground effects generated by certain spells, and when you consume a fire infusion with the Fireball, your next cast will explode into multiple secondary projectiles. So now suddenly, the Fireball no longer feels like a slow single orb, but more like a miniature of the Storm Bolt, by spreading across the screen and multiplying your damage in every direction. Not only does your flame now appear purple, but they also ignite as chaos, meaning that your damage over time comes from a completely different scaling. This allows you to stack chaos multipliers, ignite duration and damage over time, in ways that the basic Fireball build would not achieve. The Blood Mage Ascendancy will tie everything together by changing the way that you pay for spells. Instead of mana, every cast will cost life. At first, that might sound dangerous, but the passive tree and the gear are designed to make it feel smooth. Your life pool is massive, your regeneration and the leech are consistent, and your spells will actually help you to sustain by returning the health with every cast. So let's take a look at the build, and the first thing is the skill gems. The fireball is our centerpiece, but it only becomes the monster we want when it interacts with infusions. The infusion mechanic means that you need to support spells that constantly feed your fireball with the charges of power. The living bomb is one of the most important ones, because it generates fire infusions instantly. By casting it twice before firing the fireball, you guarantee that all the fireballs will be infused and you will unleash a secondary projectiles. Then the solar orb and the snap will add extra consistency. The solar orb provides a sustained zone that constantly refreshes your infusions, while the snap gives you an on-demand generation when you need so less most, by turning routine casts into devastating detonations. The flow of combat is built around weaving these spells together. You begin by placing the sigil of power to ground yourself in the fight, then apply the despair to strip enemy cast resistance and open them to your damage. You'll trigger the living bomb to build infusions, and then release the fireball to consume them. All of this will create a wave of projectiles that ricochet across the map. The Chaos Bolts serve as a filler, by keeping your damage rolling when you cycle your infusion generation. It feels like a rotation of build up and release, and once you master the timing loop, it becomes the second nature. Then next, our passive tree will combine three principles. So scale chaos infused damage, turn the life into your resource, and amplify the spellcasting utility. We start by getting nodes that boost spell damage, ignite scaling, and the chaos multipliers. With the Black Flame Covenant active, all of your fire damage will become chaos, so every chaos node will become relevant. The damage over time multipliers, ignite nodes, and the burning damage clusters will all become key parts of your scaling. This dual interaction between the fire mechanics and the chaos mechanics is what exactly allows the fireball to reach its full potential. Then the life investment is the second major priority. Because you are a blood mage, so your life pool is both casting resource and a survival buffer. The nodes that increase the flat life, percentage life, and regeneration will become more valuable than almost anything else. Notables like the Sangumancy and the Whispers of the Flesh will feed directly into this style, by rewarding you for casting and spawning life remnants that support your sustain. Recovery on the spell hit, life leech, and regeneration nodes will keep the loop stable, so that you never feel like you're actually running out of life, despite constantly draining it. And then the final thing is utility. The fireballs infused secondary projectiles only matter if they travel far and persist long enough to hit multiple enemies, so projectile speed and duration scaling are very important. Then next we got gear, and for this build we want to emphasize life, chaos scaling, and the spellcasting efficiency. Your weapon of choice is usually a staff, which in my case is the Chimming Staff, which can roll very high spell damage, critical strike chance, and the cast speed. The staff setup also enables very strong weapon swaps, by letting you carry alternate setups for the curse application and infuse generation. Then defensively, the Rapid Globe is a strong option for the life-based sustain, while the Snake Pit provides unique projectile interactions. Then Defiance of Destiny shines in the late game to give you extra layer of survivability. Your armor pieces focus first and foremost on the maximum life and resistances, because you're constantly losing life, so stacking as much as possible is the only way to keep the engine running smoothly. Then after that, the chaos multipliers, spell damage, and the cast speed are the offensive stats that you want to get. Jewelry is where you push your ceiling, so amulets and rings with the global critical strike multipliers, chaos damage, and the cast speed are ideal. The Seed of Catalysm is a standout ring, while the rare amulets can push your damage even further. Your belt should focus on reinforced sustain, ideally rolling a very high life and the flask modifier. The flasks themselves are crucial for this build, as they act as an emergency recovery button when you get too low HP. Then for your helmet, gloves, and boots, you should follow the same principles. So life and resistances first, and then whatever offensive bonus you can find. And now finally, let's take a look at how to actually play this build. Most of the time, we want to alternate between using the Living Bomb and the Fireball. Living Bomb will provide the infusion while the Fireball consumes it, and in 1 second the enemies will disappear in purple chaos. Then against tougher enemies, the rotation becomes a bit more involved. You drop the Sigil of Power to empower yourself, then apply the Despair to strip resistances. then trigger multiple infusions, and then detonate them with the fireball. The Chaos Bolt will fill the gaps and ensure that you're never standing idle. Infusion generation is the core principle of where this build lies, so Living Bomb is your bread and butter, but the Solar Orb and the Snap will provide consistency when you need the extended loop. On weapon swap, you can carry a staff setup that allows you to quickly apply curses, by ensuring the nexts are always under the full weight of your debuffs. This DPS flow will almost become rhythmic. You drain life and restore life in the same moment, and fill the battlefield with a storm of corrupted fireballs. It's not the cleanest build visually. The purple fire, the explosions and the curses and the ground effects often will make the screen a chaotic mess. This setup takes everything that people love about the Lightning Arrow meta build and flips it into the cold base monster that freezes, shatters and absolutely demolishes maps at the lightning speed. In patch 0.3, the cold bow skills and the deadeye both received huge buffs, and when you put those two things together, then you will get a build that doesn't just clear screens, it destroys them before enemies even have a chance to move. For map clearing, the Ice Shot is your powerhouse. With the right support gems, the projectile train across the screen, and spreading the chill ground and freezing everything in their path, the monster groups just don't die, they explode in a cascade of shatters and the Herald of the Ice stacks, by leaving nothing behind. And when it's time for bosses, then you bring out the Lightning Rod, the Orb of Storms and the Snipe, while stacking freezing effects that keep them locked down. The fact that you can do both, so clear like a speed demon and take down endgame encounters, makes this build incredibly versatile. So now let's break down the most important skill gems. At its core, we are centering everything around the Ice Shot. This is your main clearing ability, and the bread and butter skill that carries the build. When you fire the Ice Shot, the projectile not only deals direct cold damage, but also creates a chilling ground behind it, which slows enemies and stacks freeze effects across the map. Then the ice-tapped arrows are the best perfect secondary skill, by providing additional cold damage while stacking freeze and the blind effects on tougher enemies. This not only boosts your crowd control, but also makes enemies more vulnerable to your other abilities. When you combine the ice tap arrows with the chilling ground from the Ice Shot, as they're unable to respond before you shatter them, then the freezing salvo is where the things get spicy. This skill adds a huge cold projectile damage and is perfect for both AoV and single target scenarios, supported by the hourglass for the cooldown manipulation and the cold penetration for breaking through the resistances. The freezing salvo ensures that bosses and elite monsters can hide behind high defenses. When you drop this on top of a pack, you're guaranteed an icy explosion of the dead. For debuffs, we are running the Frost Bomb. This applies the cold exposure, which makes enemies take significantly more cold damage. With the potent exposure and the magnified aerial support, your Frost Bombs become larger and more consistent source of vulnerability for the enemies. Dropping this before a boss fight will set you up for a massive burst damage. Then Herald of the Ice is where the clear speed really goes over the top. Every time you freeze and shatter an enemy, it causes icy explosions that chain through the pack. Combine that with your Ice Shot chaining, and suddenly every screen turns into a chain reaction of freezing detonations. The Herald is supported with the Overleech, the Cold Attunement and Elemental Armament, which all amplify your scaling and consistency. And then finally, for single target nukes, you will be using the Snipe. This is your big high damage channel skill that absolutely melts bosses in seconds. Next up, moving over to the passive tree, and this is where you really transform the Ice Shot Deadeye into an unstoppable force. The core psychology of the tree is simple: maximize cold damage, maximize projectile scaling, and add enough defenses so you don't get one shot. From the beginning, you will branch into projectile damage, bow attack speed, and the crit multipliers. These are the bread and butter for any bow build, and they make the Ice Shot scale beautifully. You also want to invest into the clusters that enhance the cold damage specifically, so things like the cold penetration, freeze duration, and the cold exposure. This ensures that not only do you hit hard, but enemies stay frozen long enough for you to capitalize. Then defensively, you're investing into the evasion and life, which naturally synergizes with the ranger's playstyle. With the high evasion, mobility, and the Wind Dancer keystone, you can avoid the majority of incoming damage. The build plays the best when you're constantly moving, so these defenses will line up perfectly with your natural gameplay. Then Javel sockets are another important aspect of the tree. These will give you flexibility, so early on you can grab resistances or mana sustain, and then later you can swap in the pure gems with the projectile multipliers, crit chance, and attack speed. On Javels, your priority should be on mana kill, as it smooths out early sustain problems. Then next up we have gear, which is always a big one, so let's break it down. Your number one priority is your bow. This build scales insanely well with the weapon quality, so the stronger your bow, the better everything feels. Look for a high base DPS bow with an added cold damage, added physical damage, and ideally plus levels to projectile gems. A Gemini base is a fantastic starting point. If you can find a bow with a crit chance as well, then that's where your damage really starts to explode. For your quiver, you wanna focus on the flat damage, attack speed, and projectile modifiers. Then mana on kill is amazing bonus here, by smoothing out sustain early. Then projectile speed also makes the ice shot feel cleaner. Then for your gloves and ring, you should prioritize the flat cold damage, resistances, and attack speed. Rings with the added physical or the cold damage to attacks are especially valuable. Your amulet is a great place to grab levels to bow or projectile gems, as well as critical strike multipliers. Later on, anointing a damage node like the serrated edges can push your damage even further. Then defensively, we focus on high evasion gear for your chest and the boots. Resistances should always be capped at 75%, and movement speed on the boots make the build feel much smoother. The jewels are where you round everything out. You want mana on kill, which is a must-have, and after that prioritize attack speed, cold damage, crit multipliers, and projectile damage. Overall, the gear progression is simple. Upgrade your bow first, then cap resistances and scale evasion, and finally min-max your accessories. And now last but not least, let me show you the gameplay. For clearing, it does not get much simpler than just spamming the ice shot. In the background, the Herald of Ice will handle the chain explosions, and your ice shot projectiles will ricochet through entire packs by freezing everything in their path, so pretty much the screen clears itself. Against bosses, your rotation is slightly more involved, but still very easy to manage, so open by dropping the Frost Bomb to apply the cold exposure, then set up the Orb of Storms and the Lightning Rod to stack on the bosses. Then from there, we combine the ice-tapped arrows and the freezing salvo for the maximum cold damage. Once the boss is frozen or vulnerable, then channel the snipe for a devastating burst, and follow that up with a barrage if needed. This combination absolutely melts even the pinnacle bosses. And now lastly, let's take a look at the leveling. So while grinding, you wanna start out with the lightning and the ice abilities, until the ice shot becomes available at level 9. From there you gradually transition into more cold damages as you unlock the ice tap arrows, freezing salvo, and the Herald of Ice. The leveling process is smooth, because the cold damage will unlock early. This build takes the full advantage of the brand new elemental infusion system, which fundamentally changes how elemental casters will scale their damage. Instead of committing to just fire, cold, or lightning, this character will combine all of these together by creating such a big offense that not only clears maps quickly, but also melts bosses when all the effects are stacked. In the early campaign, the sorceress feels fairly standard. You'll be tossing out spells like the Spark, Firebolt, and the Freezing Shards as your bread and butter, but the real magic happens once you hit Act 3 and unlock the elemental infusions. At that point, the build transforms into something entirely new. Every cast will feel multiple elemental states, so set the enemies with the fire, freezing them with a solid cold, and shocking them with the lightning all at once. It's a level of synergy that feels almost unfair. The design psychology behind this build is also important. I've created it with a solo self-found in mind, meaning that you don't need to rely on trading or chasing after specific uniques to succeed. That makes it perfect as a league starter or for anyone who doesn't want to stress about the prices and the gear availability. So offensively, we focus on stacking spell levels, the cast speed and penetration nodes, so that your spells always feel OP. The overlapping shocks, freezing, and ignites just don't increase your DPS, they will give you incredible control over the fights. The build is fast, flexible, and incredibly satisfying to play. So let's take a look at the skill gems, which is the heart of any build. The early game is all about practicality and the ease of use, while the mid to the late game transitions into a synergetic infusion-driven setup. At the very start, you will be working with the Spark, Firebolt, and the Freezing Shards. The Spark is great for AoE clearing because of the random projectile behavior, while the Firebolt provides strong single target pressure, especially on the early bosses. Freezing Shards is deceptively strong because it shotgun hits enemies at a close range, while also providing reliable freezing utility. As soon as you reach Act 3, the real power spike comes from the introduction of the Siphon elements. This gem is the centerpiece of the build. It's what allows you to sustain infusion and stack overlapping elemental buffs. From here, the gameplay loop becomes less about spamming one spell, and more about rotating through the different elements to maximize the infusion system. Early on, you want wanna focus on the added elemental damage, faster casting and controlled destruction. As your gear and levels improve, you will transition into the elemental focus, increased critical damage and the spell echo for the explosive scaling. Then priority should always be on the cast speed and the damage multipliers, as they make the gameplay feel much smoother while also boosting the raw numbers. When it comes to the gem upgrades, you wanna prioritize quality on your most important skills, so the siphon elements being the highest priority, followed by your core damage dealers like the Fireball and the Orb of Storms. Then next, the passive tree is what turns the build from a decent campaign caster into a late game powerhouse. Starting near the beginning, you immediately pick up the spell damage, mana regeneration and intelligence nodes to create a solid foundation. These nodes will keep you casting smooth and efficient, which makes you sure you never feel like you're running out of resources mid-fight. Then from there, the tree branches outwards into the elemental clusters. The beauty of this build is that it doesn't pigeonhole itself into one element. You are deliberately spreading your investments across fire, cold and the lightning nodes. The fire clusters will enhance your ignite and the raw damage scaling. Then cold clusters will empower your freeze chance and the crit potential, while the lightning clusters will focus on the shock effectiveness and the critical strikes. Together, these investments will ensure that no matter what you're casting, it always feels OP. Another big focus is on penetration. Enemies scale resistances heavily as you progress, and without penetration, your spell starts to fall off. By grabbing elemental penetration nodes across the tree, you will ensure that the damage stays relevant against even the tankiest bosses. Defensively, dehydration is also the key, so energy shield clusters combined with the life nodes will give you a dual layer defenses. This lets you absorb huge spikes of damage without instantly dying, while your regeneration and the shield charge sustain you through the prolonged encounters. Mana sustain also becomes vital, so you'll be picking up nodes that increase mana efficiency and the regeneration, which allows you to keep spamming spells without interruptions. And then finally, the crit padding ties everything together. The spell critical hit chance and the multiplier nodes give the sorceress a burst potential, by turning the standard casts into a massive nukes. Next up we have gear, which is always a huge part of any build. So let's break down what you need here. During the campaign, you want to prioritize movement speed above all else. Boots with the movement speed will completely change how the build feels, letting you dodge mechanics and move efficiently through the acts. After that, focus on the life, energy, shield and resistances. These stats will keep you alive through the early difficulties, while still letting you to dish out damage. Weapon-wise, the staffs are the best starting option. They naturally roll with the largest stat bonuses, which makes it easier to find strong versions early on, but then later you want to transition into a wand and a shield setup, or a mix of offense and defense. The shields provide an extra energy shield, resistances and sometimes even block, which is super valuable against tougher bosses. Then for stat priorities, intelligence is your main attribute, but don't neglect the strength and dexterity requirements for the certain gems. Then on gear, your priority should be first the movement speed, then maximum life, then mana regeneration, then cast speed, then plus levels to elemental skills, and then any type of resistance. Energy shield scaling should always be secondary, but still relevant. By combining life with the ES, you will get a durable hybrid defense that feels safe in both campaign and maps. Unique items are not required for this build, but if you happen to find early game uniques like the movement speed boots with the energy shield bonuses, or even a wand with the extra spell damage and the chaos resistance, then they can make your leveling much smoother. And remember, the entire design of this build is for solo self-found, so everything you need can be obtained through the normal progression. And now finally, let's see how do you actually play this build. Early on, you want to rotate between the Spark for AoE and the Fireball for single target damage. Freezing Shards is a great third option if you pick up a cold base staff, as it gives a great freeze uptime. Then combine these with the Frost Bomb for the AoE nukes and the Flame Wall for projectile damage boosts. By Act 3, once infusions come online, then the build's gameplay loop changes. You will rotate between the spells of different elements to maintain multiple infusions simultaneously. For example, you want to cast the Orb of Storms near the enemies to generate the lightning infusions, then drop a Flame Wall for the fire infusions, and then follow that up with the cold spells like the Frost Bomb to trigger the freezing. This rotation ensures that you're stacking all three elemental buffs by maximizing both the damage and crowd control. Then in the maps, the sorceress shine with mobility and stacking damage. You'll dart around the packs, setting up infusions, and watching as entire groups of enemies get deleted in overlapping effects. Against bosses, you control the fight by freezing them in a place, while stacking ignites and shocks for massive sustained DPS. The defensive gameplay revolves around keeping your energy shield topped off, then maintaining resistances and dodging big telegraph hits with the movement speed. Overall, this build is fluid, responsive, and incredibly high DPS. This is a setup that has been making waves across the community because of how effortlessly it can shred through the maps, crush bosses, and scale into the endgame. If you are someone who enjoys a fast-paced range playstyle with the ability to delete entire screens of enemies in seconds, then this is a setup that you definitely want to try out. The strength of this build comes from combining Lightning Arrow's massive screen clearing power with the supporting mechanics like the Herald of the Thunder, Tornado Shot, and the Lightning Rods for devastating single target damage. When you're mapping, it feels like you're constantly surrounded by the chain explosions of the lightning and a thunder, as the shocked enemies fall and trigger even more Herald procs. And when it comes to fighting bosses, you can just switch into a very controlled single target rotation that melts even the tankiest targets. What really makes this build stand out compared to the other setups in the 0.3 is its versatility. It clears like a zoom mapper, but also has the raw damage to take down pinnacle bosses. And on top of that, it's very forgiving to gear. And thanks to how Ranger works, you can solve mana problems with just one good stat roll or a single javel. By the time that you're properly geared, mana stops being an issue entirely, leaving you freely to focus purely on deleting everything in front of you. So let's start with the core of our build, which is the active skill setup. We are playing as the Ranger class, and we ascend into the deadeye. The ascendancy pairs perfectly with the lightning arrow because of the projectile bonuses and incredible scaling we get from its nodes. Your main ability is of course the lightning arrow. This is your bread and butter skill for clearing packs, and when arrows hit, it unleashes beams of lightning that chain out nearby enemies, freezing and shocking them in the process. Combine this with the pierce, and each arrow can proc multiple arcs, which means that you can wipe out dense packs in seconds. For mapping, you'll be basically spamming lightning arrow non-stop. Then comes in the lightning rod, which is your go-to ability for single target fights. You plant rods under bosses and detonate them with your lightning attacks to cause massive bursts of damage. The more arrows you can stack, the more devastating your rod explosion becomes. And we also want modifiers that add additional arrows, as they multiply your single target output. Then Tornado Shot serves as our supplemental single target tool. When you place a tornado on top of the boss and fire into it, then projectiles split into novas that stack more damage on your target. It's especially effective when paired with the lightning rod. Then the Voltaic Mark is your curse setup. By applying it to the bosses, you not only increase the chance to shock, but also boost the effectiveness of those shocks, making them take even more damage. This single gem supercharges your boss DPS. Then Herald of Thunder is where your clear speed really gets pushed over the edge. Every time you kill a shocked enemy, the lightning bolts rain down and chain through the packs by creating a cascade effect. When combined with the chain arcs of the lightning arrow, this results in near infinite screen-wide clearing. And lastly, we will have Barrage in our rotation. We use it to empower the lightning arrow or the raw damage. It synergizes well with the other skills, which gives you a powerful cooldown option for the extra burst. Also, one extra tip, keep the Stormcolor arrow on the weapon swap. This allows you to inflict a massive 20-second shock on the bosses, which gives you a huge damage boost, especially in the early stages, before your gear really comes active. Now let's talk about the passive tree, because this is what really transforms the build into a powerhouse. For attributes, you will want to grab enough intelligence and dexterity to meet your gem requirements, and then dump the rest into strength for the extra life. Early on, don't worry too much about perfectly balancing your attributes. You can respec the Hooded One or Doriani later on if the gear changes your requirements. Then the build follows a progression where you start with Evasion base 3, then transition into a hybrid setup, and eventually go into a full critical strike focus tree once your bow is strong enough. That's because critical strike scaling will heavily rely on your weapon having a really good base crit and damage. Without it, the investment is just not worth enough. But once you get the right bow, the damage will skyrocket. In the endgame, you'll eventually move into the Chaos Inoculation if you want to completely ignore the chaos damage. This does require strong gear, but it makes your character much tankier against endgame content. The Ghost Dance will then serve as your main source of recovery. Overall, this setup emphasizes projectile damage, attack speed, evasion, and later critical strike multipliers. It's a natural fit for a bow ranger, and feels smooth when you progress through it. Then next up we have gear, which is always a huge part of any build, so let's break down what you exactly need. Your first priority is capping your elemental resistances at 75% across the board. Fire, cold, and lightning resistances will need to be maxed before you do anything else. For weapons, your goal is to get the highest DPS bow that you can, and in the best case scenario on a Gemini base, look for high elemental or physical damage and increased attack speed. If you find a bow with a critical strike chance, then it's even better, because that is what unlocks your crit scaling later. Then the quiver should have a flat damage, attack speed or projectile modifiers. Projectile speed is also a great bonus, because it makes your lightning arrow feel much smoother. Then on rings and gloves should focus on the flat damage and resistances. Ideally, you want a flat lightning or the physical damage here, to scale from your attacks. Your amulet should provide spirit, since you will need at least 30 if you want to run the Rockei Mountain or the companion with the K Stara. Then for the chest armor, prioritize the high evasion. Once you're pushing red maps, rarity becomes very valuable, so aim for at least 100% increased rarity if possible, but don't sacrifice damage or defenses just to hit that number. Then Jevels on the tree should provide generic damage bonuses, so things like the attack damage, elemental damage, movement speed, projectile damage, and even attack speed. One Jevel must have a Sapphire Jevel with a mana on kill. This completely fixes the mana issue during mapping. And finally, anoint the serrated edge on your amulet for a solid damage boost. The core principle of gearing is simple. Upgrade your bow first, then focus on defenses like evasion and energy shield, and finally fill in your resistances and damage stats with the accessories. And now finally, let's see how to actually play this build. For clearing maps, it's simple. Just fire lightning arrow into the packs. Herald of the Thunder will take care of the chaining explosions, and your arrows will arc lightning through everything in a sight. Then against tanky rares, you can drop the lightning arrow to speed up things. For bosses, your rotation is little more involved. Precast about 20 lightning rods where the boss is going to spawn. If possible, also drop a frost bomb for the extra debuff. When the boss spawns, immediately apply the Voltaic mark, then weapon swap to cast the ball lightning for a huge shock uptime. Then fire tornado shot directly on the boss, and then use the brush to empower your arrows. Once that's set up, you just spam lightning arrow and watch the health bar disappear.